G'day and welcome to Doesn't Matter Again. Just doing a little coronavirus update today. South Australia's went into lockdown today, more or less. Only pharmacies, petrol stations and shopping centres are open. Our gym got closed today, so tomorrow, it closes at midday, so last training session in the morning that we'll have for a few months. Talking to a lot of people online, we're all chatting, adapting to the changing world that we find ourselves in. There's an awful lot of frivolous discussion on the internet at the moment. There's a lot of hurt feelings and worries that people are having over the economic times. Most governments are coming to the party and keeping people bailed out, at least to a frugal or minimum degree. I don't think anyone's going to go hungry, at least in most of the OECD countries, certainly not in Australia. I'm not going to get into how countries could be doing better or worse, or how our government could be doing better or worse. That's possibly for a later date. The thing that concerns me the most is that the social distancing and the responsible behaviour within a quarantine is so bloody important that it's got to trump pretty much almost any subject that I can think of at the moment. If we don't want to be doing this into next year, which is a very likely possibility unless we can slow down and eventually stop the flow of infections, if we want to keep this to maybe a 6-month period when we can at least start to resume normal activities and normal economic activities and get a recovery going, then we're going to need to do the right thing now and isolate ourselves from each other, which is a wholly unnatural thing to do for a social species like ours, a highly gregarious, communicative species like humans. So we flock together very naturally. So it's going to be a hard ask, and for a lot of people who are losing money, I have friends who are losing vast sums of money, whose businesses are going down the tube. I worry about the gym, I worry about my own jobs, my own sources of income, but that's still not as important as making sure that this disease kills the least amount of people and operates as a brake on our economies for the smallest or shortest amount of time. And the only way that's going to happen is if we all accept that it's necessary. We will stop whinging about it and just get on with it. The COVID virus is not a flu. That's one of the myths that I've been debating with a few people recently, including friends of mine who have been severely misled. It's not a flu, it's a zoonotic virus. It is not completely understood yet, because if it was, we'd have a vaccine for it already, but we don't. And the likelihood of successful trials resulting in a vaccine before 2021, that's next year, is highly unlikely. We will not be seeing a virus until next year, if then. They're not easy viruses to crack, they mutate easily. You can very easily create a vaccine for one or even two strains, only to discover there's 3 or 4 more. There are more strains evolving. It evolves and mutates reasonably quickly. And the seasonal flu changes every year, and we have to constantly keep up with that. But some of these zoonotic or coronaviruses mutate even more rapidly, and that poses a big problem for our ability to produce even a yearly vaccine that's relevant to the current strain. So it's not a flu, and it has a 3 to 4 times mortality rate. That's a fact. You can debate it all you want. You can argue with it all you want. If you do, I have no reservations in calling you a damn fool. And you may be a friend of mine, you may be a family member, you're still a damn fool. That is a fact. Its mortality rate is between 3.4 and 4. this is recorded worldwide. There are people who've thrown local figures from Switzerland and elsewhere where the mortality rate isn't high, or here, but they're quoting much, much lower infection rates at much earlier stages in the epidemiological spread. It's dishonest for people who follow sports and sports statistics. It's like comparing two players in completely different leagues at different stages in their careers, and then comparing their stats. It's dumb as dog shit. It really isn't the smartest thing to do, and it's self-serving, and it just feeds the fear. People who are denying the coronavirus are very much like people who are climate deniers. They're full of fear. They're driven by fear of this thing, and anger and rage and denial and all the most wonderful traits of human beings, not our most greatest virtues. It's not a flu. It's much more dangerous than a flu. It's going to kill a lot more people than the flu. The flu kills 640,000 people annually at the most. That's its highest peak that it's reached, and it took 7 years to reach that peak. Most years it's under 500,000. So, especially with the spread of flu vaccines, which are awesome and have actually cut down the number of people. A lot more people used to die of flu decades ago, and the flu vaccine has made big inroads there, which gives us hope for eventually being able to tame these coronaviruses. Between that and possibly, though I have less hope of that happening, of taming the wet markets in China and elsewhere in Southeast Asia, we could probably stop that source eventually cold. But I'm a little cynical as to whether the Asians will ever do that. It's such a long-standing tradition in many of those countries, and there's a lot of profit in it too. So they're meat-hungry countries. They're all coming to their own in terms of incomes, and they want to eat meat. You can't entirely blame them. We're going to have to come up with a technological fix for that, synthetic meat or cloning meat, for sure. That's the only way I can see that we can resolve that problem. Getting people to behave better isn't always an option. Sometimes you have to give them a better technological option first. That's a bit of a tangent, but still, it spreads faster than the flu. It has a far, far longer incubation rate. The shortest incubation rate is about 4 days, and it can be as much as 28 days for the odd individual, and most people it's about 10 to 14. So it's a very long incubation rate. It survives on surfaces for far longer than the flu. It survives in the air for up to 3 hours, and there's no flu that does even close to that. So as soon as you start looking at this zoonotic virus and comparing it to the array, it's not one, but of the array of seasonal flus, you begin to realise that it ain't anything like it. You're comparing hippopotamus with the giraffe. They're not the same creature at all. They might have 4 legs and that's about it. There are some similarities in symptoms, but there's also some great dissimilarities. Flu doesn't cause glass lung or bloodstorm. It doesn't stop people's hearts as a general rule. It kills mainly with pneumonia. Whereas the corona can kill you a variety of ways, though heart failure is the most common one, followed by pneumonia and the internal lacerations of the lungs, puncturing of the lungs thousands of times over, which is what they call in glass lung. Horrendous way to die. It's truly a different creature, quite an unusual microbe, and people comparing it to that are perpetuating a dangerous myth, and they are encouraging people to function in a state of cognitive dissonance and tell themselves not even comforting lies, but actually divisive, angry lies that will only make them more miserable and put themselves and others in danger, because unfortunately people's emotions tend to guide a lot of their behaviours. I'm well aware of the fact that there's a lot of Dunning-Kruger going on here as well. There are a lot of people out there who, far more than we've ever had actually, who have placed enormous value in their own opinions, but their opinions and their capacity to form worthwhile, informed, rational, epistemologically sound opinions are severely limited. They just don't have the education or the time or the mental rigor to do it. They're not going to bother either. So again, driven more by emotions, driven more by fears and wishes and hopes than facts, than evidence, than statistical trends and an empirical basis for forming beliefs. I'm aware of that, but somehow we have to get through that formidable amount of intransigence and cognitive roadblocks and get it through to people that at the very least they need to accept that there are far smarter people than any of us working on this problem and who are convinced it is a problem. And unless you think and can demonstrate that you're a genius in epidemiology or immunology or some microbiology, then you really need to take what the experts say in this area. It is an extremely specialized niche area of human endeavour, and most of us are poorly qualified to understand it at all, let alone with the degree of depth and complexity that the experts who are warning us have. So some humility is required in this. We also need to bear with the fact that it's going to get substantially worse over the coming months. We've been told here in Australia, here I'm touching my face again, that we've got about a minimum of 6 months, and that's probably best case scenario. It's a long time to be indoors, a long time to be isolated from one another. It's a long time to be living on somewhat frugal incomes, though I'm very grateful for the fact that I live in a country where I'm being provided with assistance as my work dries up. There are many people in Africa and vast areas, parts of Asia and even Eastern Europe, who will not be receiving much, if any, assistance at all. There's plenty of people, even in the United States, who will, from what I can see, not be receiving as generous as assistance as some of the European countries and Australia and New Zealand and so on are. So I consider myself exceedingly fortunate in that respect. But I would just implore people to be adaptable, to be flexible, and to respect the scientific knowledge that drives itchy eye, that drives our understanding of this pandemic. It's real. It's not a ghost. The world is not killing its economies over a ghost. It's not some secret plot by an Illuminati cabal. It isn't, and we all know that. Even the people purporting it secretly deep down know that they're talking absolute shite. Okay, it is a real deal. It's not overblown. It's happening, and the numbers are supporting that. And anyone who spends any time looking at those numbers consistently and with reflection and objectivity can see that. I don't want to believe it's true. I'd love to believe that this was overblown. I really would, because I don't fancy spending the next 6 months talking into my phone and training in my backyard. That's not going to be fun. But it is a reality that I must accept, because wiser people than me believe it to be so. And so until I see evidence to the contrary, that's the way I and all reasonable, rational people should point themselves in that direction. Our emotions won't always be consistent with that, but as I usually say to my students, fuck your emotions. They're not always that useful, and in this particular instance, they're far from useful. How you feel about the situation is irrelevant. Things are going to happen the way they're going to happen because they're driven by causality and physics, not by the way we feel. Having said that, in order to make our feelings livable, we'll be able to survive and live with ourselves over the next few months, we should seek as much humour and joy and pleasure in the small things at least as possible. I am going to look forward to spending lots of time with the family, and I'm going to get a lot of writing done, a lot of filming done, so that'll be good. You'll see a lot more of me, whether you like it or not. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting process, an educational one. I'm looking forward to getting some growth out of it, getting some development, and growing inside work on the guns as well. You can train at home, you can exercise at home. I'll be making videos of a variety of exercises and martial arts and just physical exercises that you can do without any equipment at all. And I'll be posting them on my Does It Matter channel. I'll also be posting them on the Toe to Toe Facebook site for Toe to Toe Martial Arts. So if you want to have that, give that a gander and have a bit of a sweat with us. I'm going to do some live streaming events. Obviously, with the amount of bandwidth restrictions that we're probably going to face soon enough, it will be difficult to live stream a lot. They're already, Netflix and Stan and so on are already lowering bandwidth quality to make sure that they can keep the flow. So we'll have to see how that goes, but I'll try and live stream as often as I can, and I'll certainly be posting daily videos for people on all manner of topics, as well as training and exercise. And we should all we can all commiserate in our hostage-like state. So thanks for that, guys, and thanks for putting up with me today. It was something I had to get off my chest concerning some of the poor thinking going on. It is real. It doesn't feel real, does it? But it is real. It's going to feel increasingly real over the next few weeks. Please be patient with one another. Please remember this isn't going to last. However long it takes, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, it won't last. We will have lives after Corona. And at some point, it might be slow, it might be fast. The economy will come roaring back with opportunities that we never saw coming, and with changes, some good, some bad, but changes that will make the world, I think, in the long run, a better place. In the meantime, we have an opportunity to get closer to each other, to the people that matter most to us, and to spend some time of reflection and thought, and take stock. Often the way we live, the speed and pace at which we live, we don't get much time to do that. So let's try and capitalise on the silver lining of this otherwise rather shitty tunnel we're moving through, and we'll come out the other end. In the meantime, I will rant, ramble, and do my best to entertain you, and we'll speak again. Cheers, guys.